The alien detention hall was silent except for the low hum of the scanning gates. Cold, bluish light spilled across the floor, reflecting on the polished metal walls. The air smelled sterile, metallic, a place built not for comfort but for control. Inside, hundreds of prisoners waited their turn, sitting on benches or standing with wrists bound in glowing restraints. Most of them were terrified. The Ketheri Empire's process was simple: every captive was scanned, tagged, and sorted by value, labor, ransom, or disposal. No one escaped this place. Until today. A guard barked something in the Ketheri tongue, and a tall, scarred human was shoved forward from the line. His steps echoed against the steel floor as he approached the archway scanner. His name was Nathan Cole. He didn't look like the others, not entirely. He wasn't trembling, wasn't looking at the floor, wasn't begging the guards. His pale gray eyes moved slowly across the room, taking everything in. The jagged scars on his arms, neck, and even across one side of his face told a story no one there understood. The guards noticed too. "Move," one of them growled, jabbing him in the back with an electric staff. Nathan didn't flinch. He simply stepped into the scanner. The machine came alive with a low hum, beams of green light moving over every inch of his body, analyzing, cataloging. And then it stopped. A sharp alarm blared, shrill and alien, cutting through the room. Every guard froze. The scanner's display, normally showing biometric readings and classification tags, was flashing an alert no one in the room had ever seen. Warning: subject, human, classification error. BIO readings, NON standard. Status: unkillable/restricted. The words glowed red across the console. One of the guards hissed, taking a step back. The others tightened their grips on their weapons, uncertain. "Translate that," said the shift commander, a tall, four-eyed Ketheri with a voice like broken glass. The display shifted to universal script. Warning: termination protocol impossible. Do not engage. Subject is non-terminable. The room went quiet. Nathan stepped out of the scanner, slow and calm, his expression unreadable. The commander's mandibles clicked nervously. "How is that possible?" No one answered. The scanner began repeating the warning in an automated voice, cold and mechanical: "Subject is impossible to kill. Subject is impossible to kill. Subject is." The commander slammed a clawed hand on the console to shut it off, but the damage was done. Every guard in the hall was now staring at the human like he was some kind of living nightmare. Nathan's lips curled into the faintest hint of a smile. "Guess I broke your toy," he said quietly. The commander snapped his claws. "Restrain him. Triple bind." But even as they moved in, none of the guards seemed eager to touch him. The Ketheri were a proud warrior race, and they feared nothing. But this? This made their instincts scream. Nathan didn't resist as the extra restraints were slapped on, locking his arms behind his back. His calmness unnerved them even more. He was led down a different corridor, separate from the other prisoners. Not to the labor pens. Not to the processing cages. No, they were taking him somewhere else. The room they brought him to was smaller, lined with observation panels. Several higher-ranking Ketheri officers stood behind the glass, murmuring in their native clicks and hisses as they studied him. Nathan sat in the center, chained to a chair bolted to the floor. After a few minutes, one of the officers entered, a figure in a black command cloak, decorated with imperial insignia. His mandibles were longer, polished with ceremonial markings. "I am Commander Jathrek," he said, his voice almost calm, but with an edge of caution. "Do you understand where you are?" Nathan tilted his head slightly. "Prisoner processing facility. Somewhere on your outer rim. Don't know the sector." "You should not know that," Jathrek said sharply. Nathan shrugged, chains rattling. "I listen. People talk. Your guards aren't as quiet as they think." Jathrek's eyes narrowed. "You are an anomaly," the alien commander said. "Our scanners mark you as non-terminable." "That is not possible." "Looks like it is," Nathan said dryly. The commander circled him like a predator considering a dangerous prey. How did you survive this long? Your kind's colonies fall in days. Your fleets burn. And yet, his claw traced the air above Nathan's scars. You look like you have walked through fire and came out alive. Nathan's expression didn't change. Maybe I have. You should be dead, Jathrek hissed. Nathan's gray eyes finally locked on him, cold, calm, but carrying something that made even the alien falter. Yeah, Nathan said quietly. People have been telling me that for a long time. Outside the observation window, one of the other officers whispered, "What do we do with him?" Another replied, "Protocol says such an anomaly must be reported to High Command." And if High Command decides he's a threat? Then he will be studied. The room fell silent at that word. Because they all knew what it meant. Nathan sat there in silence, listening, waiting. His heart rate never spiked. His breathing never quickened. He wasn't just calm, he was patient. And somewhere deep inside, he was smiling. Because Nathan Cole hadn't just been captured. He had let himself be captured. The next cycle aboard the Kethri station was tense. The hallways were quieter, the guards more alert. Word had spread, not officially, but through whispers, through sidelong glances, through the unease that rolled like a storm through the facility. Nathan Cole, the human that could not be killed, was still sitting in the isolation cell. The station commander, Jathrek, hadn't slept. He had spent hours staring at the report blinking on his datapad, the one he was supposed to transmit to High Command. His claws tapped against the surface of his desk. If he sent it, the Empire would send a science dreadnought to dissect the human. That was the protocol for an anomaly. But Jathrek couldn't shake the look in Nathan's eyes. Not defiance. Not rage. Something worse. Patience. The cell door hissed open, and Jathrek entered again, this time without guards. He stood across from Nathan, who remained seated, posture relaxed despite the chains. "You've been very quiet," Jathrek said. Nathan didn't respond. "I have questions," Jathrek continued. "You will answer them." Nathan slowly turned his head. "Or what?" Jathrek's mandibles twitched at the insolence, but he didn't lash out. "You think I won't harm you because the scanner says you are unkillable?" "I think," Nathan said, leaning forward slightly, "that you don't want to find out what happens if you try." The commander froze. The words weren't loud, but they were heavy. Nathan smiled faintly. "Go on," he said. "Test it. Pull the trigger. See if it works." Jathrek didn't move. Because for the first time since he'd taken command of this facility, he wasn't sure he'd survive the outcome. When he left the cell, Jathrek's claws were trembling. He didn't like that. He summoned his second-in-command, a lean Kethri named Kreth, who entered quickly, bowing low. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Kreth said carefully. "Maybe I have," Jathrek replied. "The human is wrong. Everything about him is wrong. His vitals, his scars, even his calmness. I think." He trailed off. "You think what?" Kreth pressed. Jathrek's mandibles clicked slowly. "I think he came here on purpose." Kreth recoiled. No human would choose to be captured. Their kind fights, flees, dies screaming. They don't. This one did. Later that cycle, a transport vessel docked with the station, bringing in supplies and a single new prisoner, another human. This one, a young woman, injured and terrified, was dragged through the halls by 2 guards. Nathan heard her before he saw her, the faint sound of her voice echoing through the corridors. When she was brought past his cell, he looked up sharply. "Lydia," he said, his voice suddenly different, urgent. The guards froze in surprise. The woman, Lydia Cole, Nathan's younger sister, snapped her head toward the sound. Her eyes went wide. "Nate," she gasped. The guards shoved her forward, but the damage was done. Now Jathrek had confirmation. The 2 humans knew each other. And Nathan had just revealed that he wasn't alone. That night, alarms sounded again, but not from the scanners. From the outer perimeter. A ship had appeared in the system. A human ship. Kreth stormed into Jathrek's office. "We are detecting an approach vector. Small vessel. Human design, but the energy readings are wrong. Too high for its size." Jathrek's claws flexed. "Is it armed?" "We don't know yet." Jathrek glanced at the cell feeds, at Nathan, sitting there in the same calm posture, eyes half closed, as if waiting for something. "Put the station on alert," Jathrek ordered. "And double the guard on the humans." The guards arrived at Nathan's cell to reinforce security. He opened his eyes. "You feel it, don't you?" he said quietly. One of the guards hesitated. "Feel what?" "That hum in your bones. The air changing." Nathan smiled. "It's coming." "What is?" the guard snapped. Nathan leaned back against the chair. "My ride." Jathrek watched the tactical display in growing unease. The human ship wasn't broadcasting identification codes. It wasn't responding to hails. And now it was decelerating toward the station, deliberately. "Charge weapons," Kreth said. "No," Jathrek replied sharply. "Not yet. If that ship attacks, we'll return fire." "But if it doesn't?" He didn't finish the thought. Because deep down, he didn't think weapons would matter. Hours passed. The human ship remained outside visual range, just sitting there, waiting. And Nathan? Nathan was smiling now, openly. When Jathrek entered the cell again, he found Nathan sitting calmly, staring at the observation glass as though he could see through it. "You've brought something here," Jathrek said, voice low. "No," Nathan replied. "Something followed me here." "There's a difference." "What is it?" Nathan's gray eyes locked onto him. "You ever hear of a Lazarus protocol?" Jathrek frowned. The words meant nothing to him. Nathan leaned forward as far as his chains allowed. "Your empire killed a lot of humans. Burned our colonies. Wiped out our fleets. But some of us didn't stay dead." Jathrek's breath caught. "You mean?" "I mean," Nathan said softly, "you've got one shot to let my sister go and walk away from this. Because once it starts..." His voice dropped to a whisper. "It won't stop until everything you've built is ash." Outside the cell, Kreth was pale. "Commander, we must alert High Command." "No," Jathrek said, his voice strangely distant. "No, if this is what I think it is, by the time they respond, it will already be too late." Kreth stared. "What are you saying?" Jathrek turned, mandibles tight. "I'm saying," he said quietly, "we may be standing inside a death sentence." That night, the hum in the air grew louder. And for the first time in Ketheri history, a station full of hardened soldiers lay awake, gripped by a fear they couldn't name. Because somewhere out there, in the dark between the stars, something was coming for them. And Nathan Cole, the man they could not kill, was smiling. The station shook. It wasn't a normal impact, not weapons fire, not a collision. It was a single pulse that reverberated through every bulkhead, every conduit, every piece of alien steel. Lights flickered. Gravity wavered for a heartbeat. And then the alarms began to scream. Unknown energy signature inside the perimeter. Kreth shouted, his voice panicked over the comms. It bypassed the outer shields completely. Jathrek was already on the command deck, claws gripping the tactical display. The hologram showed a single human ship, small, sleek, and glowing with power that made no sense. "Boarding craft?" one officer asked. "No," Kreth said, voice shaking. "That's not a boarding craft. That's something else." And then it happened. The human ship fired. But not weapons, not in any conventional sense. Instead, a web of pure energy shot across space, striking the Ketheri station. The entire facility's power grid went dark in an instant. Every weapon, every shield, every restraint, dead. Including the ones holding Nathan Cole. The cell door hissed and slid open as if welcoming him. Nathan stood, stretching his shoulders. The glowing cuffs fell from his wrists like they had never been there. Outside, the guards scrambled, but none dared fire. Their weapons were dead, just like everything else. Nathan stepped into the corridor, his movements calm, almost casual. "Where is she?" he asked one of the guards. The alien didn't answer, just pointed down the hall. Nathan nodded once. "Good choice." Lydia was still in a holding cell, curled against the wall, when the door opened and her brother stepped in. She blinked, stunned. "Nate? How?" He smiled faintly, helping her to her feet. "We're leaving." "You got captured on purpose, didn't you?" "Yeah." Nathan glanced toward the hallway, where distant sounds of panic echoed. Was the only way to get this close to their command center. They needed to see it with their own eyes. "See what?" Lydia asked. Nathan didn't answer. He just tapped his calm implant. "It's time." The entire station shuddered as something arrived, not by conventional FTL, not by any method the Ketheri had records for. And then, one by one, massive human ships decloaked around the station. Not ordinary warships. These were Lazarus-class dreadnoughts, the whispered myth of the human fleet. Ships said to house crews who had died and been brought back, soldiers who refused to stay dead, warriors forged in annihilation and resurrected by science the galaxy had banned as heretical. Each ship glowed with eerie, pulsing light like the heartbeat of something alive. And every single one had its weapons locked on the Ketheri station. Jathrek stood frozen on the command deck, staring at the sight. "This is impossible," Kreth whispered. "Those ships were destroyed during the purge. We saw the wreckage." "No," Jathrek said slowly. "We saw what they wanted us to see." Nathan led Lydia through the corridors toward the station's central control hub. No one tried to stop him. Some soldiers dropped their weapons entirely, backing away as he passed. By the time he reached the command deck, the doors opened for him. Jathrek was waiting, mandibles tight, claws shaking. "You could kill us all right now," the commander said quietly. "Yes," Nathan agreed. "Then why haven't you?" Nathan stepped closer until he was eye to eye with the alien. "Because I want you to understand what's about to happen," he said. "Your empire thought it could exterminate us. You thought you could break us, erase us from history. You failed." He gestured toward the viewport, where the Lazarus fleet hung like silent gods. "You wanted a war you couldn't win?" Nathan's voice hardened. "Now you've got one." Jathrek's breathing quickened, but he didn't look away. "You can't be killed," he said, almost to himself. "No," Nathan said. "But you can." Outside, the human fleet opened fire. Not enough to destroy the station, just enough to carve its message into the surface of the nearest Ketheri moon. An unmistakable message in universal script, burned into rock. "We are not done." When the firing stopped, the fleet didn't jump away. It simply waited, surrounding the station like an executioner's noose. Nathan turned to leave the command deck, Lydia close behind. "What happens now?" Jathrek asked. Nathan paused in the doorway, glancing back over his shoulder. "Now," he said softly, "you tell your high command what you saw today. You tell them there are humans they can't kill, ships they can't destroy, and a war they can't win." His gray eyes went cold. "And then you pray they believe you." Hours later, as the human fleet finally departed, the station crew stood in stunned silence. No one spoke. Because deep down, every Ketheri there knew the truth. The man in their cell had been more than a prisoner. He had been a warning. As the last Lazarus-class dreadnought vanished into the dark, Jathrek turned to his officers. "Mark this day," he said quietly. "Because history will. The humans are coming back." Aboard the lead dreadnought, Nathan stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars. Lydia joined him, still shaken. "You think they got the message?" "Oh, they got it," Nathan said. "The question is what they'll do next." He placed a hand on the glass. Either way, he said, voice like iron, the galaxy just remembered why it fears us. The stars reflected in his gray eyes, unblinking, alive, and full of war.